that they had, grown to not trust. They don't even know where to start with dating because they're like, I've been burned, or I just came out of another situationship, or now I'm having another breakup, or I've just been single for so long and I don't want to settle. And I just have this discomfort around feeling like I'm not doing it right, or there's something wrong with me for being a single woman of a certain age. And I really identified with them because I also went through a singlehood journey where I felt like, there was something wrong with the fact that I wasn't doing what my peers were doing, or or being on this relationship escalator, as we often see people in.
Yeah.
And I knew that when I was in my singlehood journey, that there were certain things that I did that really became the foundation for one, the person I am now in a now 15-year relationship, and continuing to work on that.
Mm-hmm.
But also things that really helped me get to know myself, so that I knew what I was looking for by the time, I did meet someone that I wanted to spend my life with. And so I wanted to really help facilitate that for these women. And I felt restricted by the medical model of it all. I felt like, why do I need to diagnose you just to help you find ways to explore life and more expansively? Right? Like, that's not, being single isn't a diagnosable thing. And to try to pathologize you for being single over 30 essentially is, I'd be part of the problem, right? I'd be part of a long legacy of healthcare providers who pathologized women for not following a status quo.
Hello, and welcome to the F.E.E.L Podcast today. My name's Melissa Crook, and I'm your host here. I've got a new friend here with me, and we actually been trying to do this for a while. Fanny and I have been going back and forth for a while. I got a chance to have a Google Meet with her several months ago. And just between both of our schedules, we both have a lot going on, but we're finally here together today. And she stuck out to me from the day she introduced herself to me via our good friends at Podmatch, because the way she is supporting women in how she shows up in it, I think it's a badly needed space. It's a space that's not represented and talked about enough. And I was like, ooh, yeah, we got to have you on here. We got to let women know what's possible, even if they don't live close to your area. Although with all the things you have going on online, I think you could probably connect with people from a lot of different spaces, but letting other women know what's possible and what to think about and how to see themselves as we go through different seasons in life, whether it's a job change, a location change, or a relationship change, how we can still be in touch with who we are and thrive. And I'll get more into that. I don't want to give it all away up front. But Fanny Tristan describes herself as empathic, nurturing, dedicated, and sensitive. Welcome to the F.E.E.L Podcast, Fanny.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad to have you. I'm so excited we're finally getting to get together and have this conversation. We're going to start at the beginning and kind of weave our way through your story and how you got to where you are today through the talking points. And the first one, and this goes really, really ties into how you show up in the world and what you do and how you support others. But it has to start with you prioritizing your self-care, making sure you're filling your cup and your resources, because you're giving out a lot to others in your work on all fronts. So talk to me about your self-care journey, how you when and how you realized it was important for you, and to be your most authentic, healthy, present self.
Yeah. I mean, I think that something I've realized since, just being in the workforce and, becoming a mom and, being a founder. And, I think that I realized that people will, there's always another cup to pour into, right? Yeah. Like, there's always a reason why people may need you, Mm-hmm. And so it really is up to you to be your biggest advocate, because, we can't blame people for advocating for what they need. Right.
Sure.
And if you're who they need a lot, then only you can advocate for what you need.
Sure.
And so I think I've learned to be very honest with myself about my capacity, right? Like, how long can I go without hanging out with my girlfriends? what time is actually a healthy time for me to go to bed, and how do I hold myself accountable to going to bed on time, even if I want to stay up late to finish a project. Um, how, how do I want to show up as a parent, as a wife, right? Like, what are the things that need to be in place for me to feel at ease when I'm spending time with my family and not just stressed out because there's all these things I have to do and I got to chauffeur people and I got to make all these things happen. But if there's a certain type of person that I like to show up as to the people that I care about, what do I need to do to be able to show up as that person? And that is someone that has good sleep. That is someone that doesn't pencil things into their schedule because they need to just get things done. They just say no to things, or reschedule or tell people that they can wait for things, until other things that are more of a priority in that moment get taken care of. All in the effort of me being able to maintain my nervous system.
Yeah, you utilize healthy boundaries as a pathway to your self-care. Have you always realized you did that? Or is that something you had to like, oh, wait a minute, in order to do these things, I've actually got to make sure I'm putting them in my calendar and prioritizing them in a way that doesn't allow other things. That penciling in things. We are so guilty of that. And you said something really important, and it's something you think I would learn before now, but here at the ripe old age of 56, I finally figured out capacity versus actual time on a calendar is how I need to schedule myself. And you mentioned that. So talk to me about the role. I mean, you're utilizing healthy boundaries now. Have you always had a good handle on that, or how did you learn that?
I think maybe while I was when I started my career in private practice as a therapist, where I got to make my own schedule, I get to decide how many clients I want to see, right? I had to really question what felt like a normal amount of people to see in one day for the work that I was doing.
Yeah.
I think back when I used to work for like a community clinic or just a nonprofit or, working for someone else, like they tell me how many clients I should see for how long. Right. And, it was hard to really control the things that were causing the burnout. Right. Because there were plenty of stressful things happening in life. But not realizing that, I'm also experiencing empathy fatigue and, secondary trauma, and all of these things that kind of really tire me out, and then contribute to the erosion of my skills ultimately. Right. And so knowing that I was running my own practice and being the only one that's responsible for myself and maintaining those skills and continuing my education, I had to make sure that I had things in place to make sure that I kept performing well. And I realized pretty quickly, like after seeing 5 clients in a day, like I'm kind of good.
Yeah.
I might do other things for my business. I might do a bunch of admin stuff or network or hang out with someone in a different capacity. But I usually don't do that deep therapeutic work with more than 5 people in a day.
Yeah. I think that's such an important thing. Because you could fill probably 2 or 3 more hours in a day, but you're not going to be as present. You're going to be fatigued. That no one wins when we do that. And I think that's such a great example of the larger issue we run into when women get this idea that prioritizing themselves and their wellness is selfish. No, actually, it's actually really unselfish, because you're ensuring that by filling your cup and managing your capacity in a healthy, effective way for you, you're showing up authentic and healthy and present for everybody else as well. They're not getting a minimized version of you in any way.
Yeah.
And that goes for our families too. Like you're not, that's the thing is, when we're balancing all these things, you have to like, okay, how much do I want to have for the whole day? Not just in this workspace, but how much do I want to have for the whole day? How present do I want to be able to be in the evening, in the morning? All of these things, there's many different layers of the day to consider when we're thinking about our capacity. And I think too many times we think about capacity in terms of our work day And I think this can be really difficult, whether you're working in medicine, at therapy, which is mental health medicine, as a lawyer, all these things, they have all these billable hours, and billable hours don't take into consideration capacity. And so that ability to be like, no, I am more than just a statistic on a calendar that says I'm available. And I have to really put these things in place so I can be present in all the stages and spaces of my life.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. And this goes nicely into the connection between mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health. These are all connected. You see this all the time. You've talked about how you see it in yourself and your capacity, but also you help people do this. And so talk to me about, how did you decide that this is the avenue you wanted to go
down? As a therapist?
Yeah.
I think that I have always been nourished by intimate connection. Mm-hmm. I think I've always been hyper aware, especially as a child, and maybe a lot of children feel this way, but the performance of life, right? It's like the way that your family acts in the house versus the way they act out in public, and how drastic that can be sometimes. And you're just like, what is reality?
Yeah. Where's the disconnect here?
And so I often was just really curious about like what's underneath, when I was meeting people, when I was having friendships, it was very easy for me to kind of hold space for someone when they were no longer able to perform, And so I think that was always something that I was interested in. I also had, a mom that struggles with mental illness, and, I, as eldest daughters, as only daughters, we tend to become, backup parents.
Yeah.
And so, I think that I've had to be in a caretaker role very young in life. And that has just forced me to not make myself the center of the world,
Yeah.
And so I think I've always had to consider myself as a person, as part of a community, as part of a village, as part of a system. And so I think that really lended itself to my interest in studying human behavior, mental health, social work, and, all the systems that come into place that affect our quality of lives.
Yeah. So for you personally, I mean, you talk about being a caregiver at an early age. Did you notice the connections between all these, the mental, emotional, physical health pretty early on because of that? Or is that something you kind of, that's why I always had a stomach ache when I got, home at 4:30 p.m. or that's why I had a headache, that kind of a thing? Or was that something you're like, oh man, I can feel how the stress is impacting this?
Mm-hmm. I think that was definitely a later in life thing. I don't think we're not raised to be in tune with our bodies, right? We're raised to kind of optimize our energy.
Yeah.
And so I don't really, I don't think there was ever a time in my youth where it was about like reconnecting to my body or listening to my body. I just followed directions.
Yeah.
And so I think it's only now in my life, in my 40s, that I'm sitting here and watching my body not be able to do things it used to do, to sit and have to pay attention to, how it's changing and how I need to adjust my lifestyle to not just to maintain vitality, but to feel good in your body every day.
Yeah.
Which is why going to bed at a certain time is more important now more than ever.
Yeah. Yeah. And that sleep thing is underestimated. Thank you for that, because I think it is that very thing. We don't hear it when we're young. It's not emphasized. We don't even hear it when we go to our, Western medicine doctor's offices. They're not asking us questions necessarily. The conversations are happening more and more. We're hearing more about it. But over time, and as we were growing up, I mean, I'm about 10 years older than you. We weren't, nobody was making those connections. And it's really just, and all of a sudden you get to a point in your life, like, hold on a minute here. If I do this or I don't do that, if I don't eat here, if I don't sleep here, boy, my emotional and mental state is, and so you're like, oh yeah, all these systems are connected and speaking to each other, which I think also just makes us more in tune as humans. I'm sure it makes you feel more in tune with the people you're working with. And this next talking point, showing up for yourself unapologetically as well as other women. This for me is where your work really comes together, because you not only have your restorative space counseling and therapy that you're doing, you've got your Her Soul Supply. And this is focused on empowerment for single women of color to know who they are, to value who they are, to know they're not defined about whether they're single or coupled or not, that they can thrive. And so to me, this is like how this unapologetic piece really comes all together for you. Tell me about your road in deciding to start this part of the work you do.
Yeah. So I started my private practice about 6 years ago. Working with eldest daughters, the intersection of trauma. And I noticed a pattern. I noticed that there were women coming into my practice who I did some wonderful trauma work with, but also some who were coming in feeling like their problem was that they just couldn't have healthy relationships, and that was why they were single, and that they had, grown to not trust. They don't even know where to start with dating because they're like, I've been burned, or I just came out of another situationship, or now I'm having another breakup, or I've just been single for so long and I don't want to settle. And I just have this discomfort around feeling like I'm not doing it right, or there's something wrong with me for being a single woman of a certain age. And I really identified with them because I also went through a singlehood journey where I felt like, there was something wrong with the fact that I wasn't doing what my peers were doing, or or being on this relationship escalator, as we often see people in.
Yeah.
And I knew that when I was in my singlehood journey, that there were certain things that I did that really became the foundation for, one, the person I am now in a now 15-year relationship, and continuing to work on that. But also things that really helped me get to know myself, so that I knew what I was looking for by the time, I did meet someone that I wanted to spend my life with. And so I wanted to really help facilitate that for these women. And I felt restricted by the medical model of it all. I felt like, why do I need to diagnose you just to help you find ways to explore life and more expansively? Right? Like, that's not, being single isn't a diagnosable thing. And to try to pathologize you for being single over 30 essentially is, I'd be part of the problem, right? I'd be part of a long legacy of healthcare providers who pathologized women for not following a status quo.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they used to call women hysterical. They used to give them lobotomies, right? All because they didn't want to be housewives, or they didn't want to have kids, or they were unhappy in their relationships, and they were just acting out the discomfort or dissatisfaction with having to be a modern woman, right? They're always pinned as problematic. I mean, they used to call them witches. At
I was
point.
literally just going to say that. I was literally, that was the next thought in my head of like, if you think you know about the whole Salem witch trials and all that, the history of witches, go back and actually study the true history behind it. True history. Boy, that's a whole loaded statement in itself these days, but the true history behind it, because it was exactly that. It was women who were like, this little box you've given me to work in is not aligned with who I am. It's not working for me, and I won't settle for it.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that a lot of modern women are saying today, especially single women who don't want to settle, who don't want to just give in to, marrying someone or just having kids, because that's just what society expected them to do at this point. They want a different path, and they want to reinvent themselves, and they only see the value of doing those things because it's something that they want, or that they see that they can have with someone who aligns with their values and their principles and can really walk the walk, and not just set themselves up to, be given all sorts of lip service and then be the one that has to carry the invisible load, because that's what they watch their mothers do.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so I think, pathologizing these women I was like, that would have been part of the problem. And so
Exactly.
let me create this. Yeah. So let me create this other service that, is able to expand offerings that felt limited by that therapy practice. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to make it educational, because there are certain things that I want single women to learn about themselves, learn about how to have value added experiences with other people, how to build community, but also have in-person gatherings, have them travel, right? Because travel was a huge therapeutic factor in my singlehood journey. And like, how do I help facilitate that for them? How do I teach them about things about finances and building wealth? Because we were raised to think that we needed a 2-income household to do that, right?
Yeah.
So what happens when you don't have that? I can't buy a house anymore because I don't have a man, So I think, being able to create that platform for women to really be able to learn and thrive together, I think is really key to helping them not feel so stuck.
Yeah. And I think it allows them to feel like they can show up unapologetically, because there's just such a stigma out there. You feel like you have to apologize for who you are if you don't fit into the box. And this work you're doing with is like, no. I'm not the problem. The system and the narratives and the societal expectations are the problem. I'm not the problem. I won't apologize for that. I'll stop saying, I will not live like I'm an inconvenience or in any type of way. And I think that's so important and valuable. And also for women to have community and not feel alone in it and realize, oh, wow, there's a whole population of us out there. I'm not doing this alone. I'm not an outlier. There's not something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so when you are having, going to events where you meet other women that are just like you and they understand exactly what you're going through, I think it really changes the perspective about who's the problem.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So true. So true. All right. Talk to me about how your why and your values have informed these decisions you've made, how you've showed up in spaces. I mean, I think you are empathic, nurturing, dedicated, and sensitive. That is not only how you describe yourself, but I can see through your work and the conversations we've had. That's these are things you value that are important to you. So talk to me about the kind of the coming together of that for you and how it informs how and where you show up today.
Yeah. I mean, I think that especially in the work that I do, right, for Her Soul Supply and Restority Space, like I have the job of holding space. I have the job of facilitating these deep conversations with yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that my profession in general, no matter what offers that I have or which business, are very rooted in that belief that I'm here to hold space for you. You are the number one priority for this time that we're here together. And so I think that my work has really benefited, has really benefited me in terms of I don't have to shift very far from my values to be able to support myself and support my family and the work that I have to do when I'm not with my family, right? And so I would say that that's a big part of how I kind of maintain those values and how I live those out in my day-to-day life. And I think that it's also a big part of my journey as, in all of the intimate relationships that I have. What I mean by that is, in my partnership with my husband, in my motherhood and my relationship with my daughter, she's 6 years old now. And, I think that both of them see me as someone that is multifaceted, right? Like clearly my 6-year-old thinks of me as just mom.
Sure.
But I'm mom who also like goes out with her friends and like has her friends over, who has like things to do that aren't just with her, my husband also knows me as someone who is very driven. And once I have my eyes set on a goal or a vision that I want to manifest, that I'm going to be really dedicated to that. And I'm going to be really accountable to that. And that you can't get in my way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and
Right.
you're not going to stop me.
Yeah. Like, don't tell me, don't bother me with trivial things that you can be doing because you feel like I should be doing them. No, and so as much as I give him room to tap into his creativity, the things that he loves to do, the same is expected for me. And so I think that is the ways in which I run the relationships in my life. Like, I'll have to have that understanding is that I'm not like some martyr for you.
Right. Which I love that you're here today, because I will tell you, growing up like you did, being in a caregiver role so early, it can be difficult to move yourself out of that space and realize that's not how you have to show up in the world all the time in every way, that you can. The example you're setting for your 6-year-old, that is priceless, because we can tell our kids all the things we want to tell them. They will remember what they saw. They will remember what you did. I've got 3 grown daughters. I can tell you that right now. So that is so powerful, what you're doing and what you're teaching her right now through that. I think that's such a beautiful, and how you and your husband operate together, and seeing how this is how a back and forth and interaction. No one's in charge of another. We honor each other collectively and in our own, different ways of doing things. How soon after you left home were you able to kind of start getting yourself? I think you're incredible that you were able to get yourself on this path, because that there's not a straight through line for where you've gotten today.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that it's come with challenges, right? Like, I think if I shied away from being honest with myself about some situations that I was in, I don't think I ever would have learned my lesson. I think that, and I say this to clients a lot, is that avoidance is the number one symptom that keeps you stuck in trauma, that keeps you stuck, like, in situations that you don't find nourishing. Because if you can't even be aware of the problem, you can't be aware of the cycle and actually want to do something about them, then the cycle will just continue. I had a relationship that was really a manifestation of a lot of the negative self-image that I had of myself. It was a reflection of my chasing something that wasn't really true to my identity.
Yeah.
Basically, he was like a high functioning alcoholic, and we were together for 4 years. We met in college, which is a place where alcoholism is very normalized. I didn't really notice it. We met when I was probably at my thinnest, and so there was kind of this standard there. And when we moved together to New York and started a life here, I think things got very real about like what it means to actually be like a couple who's like a team that is trying to thrive together in the beginning of our adult lives and careers. And I think the relationship turned very sour. And I became the caregiver. And, I realized that my relationship was the only place in my life where I felt that I wasn't good enough, because on the flip side, I was, getting my master's degree in social work. I had an internship. I had a full-time job at a child welfare agency. I was going all over around New York City, doing all sorts of work, going to family court, advocating for families. And I was kind of like, pretty awesome. I was like an adrenaline junkie social worker. Yeah. And I was really killing it. And I had interests, and I reconnected with certain friends, and I started going to concerts again and things like that. And it was in my relationship where I just lived in this reality where I just felt like I wasn't good enough, or I didn't go to the gym enough. And I was, he's not happy that I'm not as thin as I was in college. And he just complete disregard for me, like holistically, as in making no real room for my growth.
Yeah.
And I was really submissive to that. I was subservient to that, because that's just how I watched my mom. My mom was very submissive to my father, and felt like her role as like a traditional wife was to be really, to defer to her husband, to her partner. And, you know, I dealt with that for a long time. And then there was a trip that we took as a family to Peru, which is where my family of origin is. And I don't really take many people there because it's not, you know, it's an expensive trip. But it is where the majority of our family is from. And I decided to take him. My dad wasn't so happy about it, and I can very much see why now. But my mother was really trying to make it happen for reasons why I also can see why now. But you know, he went on the trip. He met my extended family. He came back early, so we had like a week apart. And when I came back, he said that he actually like really enjoyed like being apart, and that maybe he should move out and we can like still be together, but like that he should like move out. And I was like, well, you literally just met my entire extended family, and after all of the babysitting I do for you and the deferring that I do to like maintain a life with you, that this is how you felt about my absence, then I think this is over. And he was really shocked at the fact that I just called it. And of course it was heartbreaking. Of course I was upset about it. And of course I wasn't expecting it, but I also felt like there was a certain level of self-respect that I just wasn't willing to sacrifice. And so that was kind of the beginning of the end. And I think after that, I did a lot of soul searching and just tapping back into parts of myself that I just let be dormant in order to like put this man on a pedestal. And it was killing me slowly. And so I knew I had to do a lot to make sure that didn't happen again.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is not an uncommon story. And what I love about it is you found your way out of it. I was in a relationship with a lot of similarities, and it started in my senior year of high school, and I got out of it my junior year, and it was messy, and it was all based on what I saw modeled growing up. And I can totally relate to that moment. There was a moment that happened in the fall of my junior year where I didn't expect, when I went into the conversation that day, I had no inclination that this was going to be, but there just a line in my head was just crossed where it was just like, no, we're done. And I knew it wasn't going to be a like break up, get back together, that we've done a lot of. It was no, we're done. No, I've seen enough. I've done enough. And you finally kind of start seeing in the mirror the path that you're heading down, like, wait a minute. This is starting to look way too much what like I'm trying to get away from. No, I get to make a decision here for me. So I understand. Thank you for sharing that. Those are powerful lessons. And they set the trajectory. Sadly, so many times, too many women don't make that choice for themselves. And they end up 15, 20 years later, sometimes making that choice, or they just live discontentedly. So thank you for sharing that and how you've been able to grow into this beautiful space that you inhabit today, which leads me to living out of your own expectations versus others. That's what you have done. You've learned the power of that. You also help others do that now as well. And talk to me about, it's complicated because you got to communicate it. It can be messy because people don't always want to. They like you showing up the way you've been showing up for them. And so when you alter and change and start living out of your own expectations instead of the ones they have of you and the ones that are serving them, it can be tricky and messy. But there's also, in my experience, there's a freedom that comes with it. Talk to me about your experience with it.
My experience with the freedom.
Like learning to live out of your own expectations versus others, and what that has meant for you in terms of living in alignment with yourself and your ability now to help others do that as well. Because I really think to really authentically help others do that, it's important that you've done the work on yourself first to really be able to connect to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it feels good to have personal freedom, right? Like it feels good to do whatever you want, right? Like within reason, clearly, like your responsibilities, if you're a parent or, you have a job, like you gotta keep your job. But I think that, even something as simple as like Sunday is rest day. I make no obligations. We wake up and we just do whatever we feel like doing. sorry, honey, if karate's on Sunday, like you're not doing karate there. It's just, we're going to
Yeah.
do it another day or from somewhere else. Sunday, I'm not going to hustle on Sunday. It is my day of rest.
Yeah.
And I'd have more days of rest if I can afford it. So, you know, I think just when I get to really follow through on those things that I feel strongly about, like they feel good. Because then that meant that we started making pancakes and like watching movies under the covers now that it's getting cold and we're going to watch holiday movies together and not worry about it. Or, you know, I'll just put something on the slow cooker all day so that we can have soup later and I can still feel productive. Because I'm like, I cooked something. But, you
everybody
know,
ate. Everybody ate.
I didn't have to get takeout, you know, so I can still have these things that I like, that I want. You know, I think it's part of why I also like to travel is like, okay, like I may not always have like tons of money to get on a plane, but I can definitely make sure that I leave the city every quarter to do something, you know, until I can go to Greece, you know, or all these other bucket list places that I have.
Yeah.
But to prioritize it is something that I save for no matter how long it takes me to do it, you know? Versus how I feel when I begrudgingly do things I don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right. And just, you know, at the sight of something not working out about the thing I don't want to do, I'm just like, see, this is why I should have done it. You know, this is why I hate doing this. It's like, you know, I'm very particular about what I'll be selfless about. Right. And it's usually because I'm doing it for someone that I really care about, because I know that it's really important to them and it doesn't cost me too much to give that.
Yeah.
And that's like a very specific criteria I have for why I do things for other people.
Yeah. You're not abandoning yourself, you know, and I think that's a big part of it too. Thank you so much for that. So good. Embracing our layers. I talk a lot to women about embracing your layers, all the pieces and parts of your story that make up who you are. The ugly ones, the hard ones, the beautiful ones, the complex ones, the shame-filled ones, all the things. And it's like, I really, truly believe in order for you to really be in touch with who you are and align and build your life around that alignment, you've got to know your value. And knowing your value comes from, and I tell people all the time, you don't have to love all these seasons and decisions and things that happened, but being able to get to a neutral point of curiosity rather than judgment. Like, you know, given what I saw growing up and what was modeled to me, it's no wonder I ended up in that relationship. Everything around me spoke to the fact that makes sense. I ended up there. I'm so glad I didn't stay there. I wish I hadn't stayed there so long, but that, and I use that example with myself because I held a lot of shame for a lot of years that I stayed in the relationship for so long. Why did I do that? Why did I allow myself to be treated like that? And then when my therapist said, she's like, I want you to get curious about that. I want you to meet her where she was at that age and see what she knew, see what she was surrounded with. And that changed everything for me. And I think that's such a key component of our layers journey. Talk to me about your layers journey and what it's looked like for you to embrace your layers and all the pieces and parts that make up who you are.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's something that is an ongoing challenge, right? Because if you are someone that wears multiple hats in your life, like caregiver, parent, partner, supervisor, leader, you know, I think that it takes work to create balance amongst those things. I think balance is not easy. And so when I think about like embracing all of the layers, I think about being able to fill. I think of it as like we are made of cups, and we have to find a way to fill all of the cups. And sometimes we spend a little too much time like trying to fill a cracked cup.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's a great metaphor. And that's a great visual too. Yeah. And I think when we can do that as well, it just, you know, it's all intertwined. It informs what we value. It informs where we set our healthy boundaries. It informs what our non-negotiables are. It informs like, oh, I know that fills my cup, that does not. So we're not going to, give any more energy to that. And also too, I think that recognition that different layers show up at different times in different relationships. So, when I ask people who they are, I'm like, I'm not just talking about who you are in this one space, whether it's home with your family, whether it's when you're traveling with your girlfriends, whether it's talk to me about all of it, because all of it makes up who you are. It's all part of your layers. That doesn't mean it shows up all at the same time too. So I think accepting the nuance that goes with that as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. In Living Out F.E.E.L, which I think you do so beautifully, finding empowerment, embracing layers. You talked about this earlier. You talked about relationships and those non-negotiables, those values that inform your relationships. Talk to me about the evolution of that, because I feel like your ability to embrace who you are and know yourself well and value yourself has really impacted and informed your relationships in your life, in all facets of your life. Would you agree that those two are interconnected?
Yeah, I would say it's very much reflective of me as a person.
Yeah. Yeah. And did that shift for you really happen after that college relationship ended?
I think so. I think that it happened gradually, like as I got to know myself more, and also as I started building community that was able to reflect back at me that I was on the right track, that I was treating people well, that I made people feel good about themselves, and that made me feel good about myself. I think that cultivating the right community was really key to that growth and that confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. So good. All right, Fanny, we are winding down here. Tell me 5 activities that nourish you.
5 activities that nourish me. I love dancing. I love house music and going out with my friends to dance. I love a good drama, like a good film. I still love going to the movies. I really, I think we live in a time where we keep wondering if movie theaters are going to become extinct. And I really hope they don't, because I love a theater. I love like a film room. What else is nourishing? Napping with my daughter. I feel like that's like such a happy place for me to just like peacefully fall asleep at the same time. Was that 3 or was that 4? I don't remember.
I think it was 4.
I think that was 4. Okay, one more. And learning. Like I feel like I'm a life learner, and so I love learning things through books, or like watching an inspiring TED Talk or something like that, or even some of the continuing education courses that I take. Yes, I have to do it for my license, but like I genuinely am interested in my field. And so I just love learning about different kinds of theoretical concepts and things that I think have a lot of impact on our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. All right. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
How do I want to feel the next 6 months? I want to feel abundant. I don't want to feel scarcity, so I want to feel abundant. I want to feel hope. I want to feel hopeful. I want to feel like I have options. I know that's not a feeling word, but I want to feel like I have options in my life.
Yeah,
which I guess is hopeful.
That. Yeah.
I want to feel grounded in myself, and I want to feel joy.
I love that so much. All right. Tell people where they can find you and follow you, learn more about all that you do. And this will also be on our website at embracinglayers.com on the resources page, but share that real quick with people.
Yeah. So for folks interested in my trauma therapy practice for eldest daughters, they can find me on Restority Space. So that's www.restority.space. And I practice in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut in the US. And for women who are seeking coaching and community, you can find me at hersoulsupply.com.
All right. I love the focus. I'm an oldest daughter. So you and I connected on that early on, and I have an oldest daughter, and my sister-in-law is an oldest daughter. And it's amazing the things that we connect on, the things, our greatest strengths that can also be our greatest hindrances if we don't know where the line in the sand is, the boundary is, the non-negotiable is. I love that that's a focal point. I don't think we talk about we talk about birth order, but I don't know if we get into enough all the complexities that go into it. And I think that oldest daughters, especially in the society and cultural narratives that go with being an oldest daughter, that's just another area. And we didn't talk about it a lot throughout the recording, but I wanted to point that out in the end. I love that's a space you've chosen. I think it's so vital and so important to finally, because you feel like you are always the one taking care of everybody and everything else. So to go to a space to know that you're the priority. You talked about this earlier. When you're with, a client, they're the priority. To be able to feel so seen, heard, and listened to when you've grown up in a narrative where it's the opposite of that, I think that's very powerful.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I love that. All right. Any last thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
I just love to tell people that remember that the world is always bigger than you think it is.
I love that. Is that informed by the travel you've done?
It is. It really is. I feel like just getting out of your comfort zone in general, either through travel or just new experiences, is always a way to really unlock that. And it tends to be the way that we kind of clear the clouds in front of us.
Yeah. I think the growth that's possible through travel is really powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that. All right, listeners, so much good in this episode today. Check out Fanny's resources. Let your friends know about Fanny's resources, and take good care of yourselves. Know you're valuable. Know you're worthy. You don't have to fit in anybody's box. It's good to be you, the way you are, and honoring that and surrounding yourself with people that honor that. I'm so thankful that Fanny, that our paths crossed, and for the way you show up in the world. Listeners, take good care of yourselves. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll see you next time here on the F.E.E.L Podcast. Hello, and thank you so much for being with us today on this episode of the F.E.E.L Podcast. If you would like more information on how you can apply these talking points that I share with our guests in each episode to your own life, really utilize this F.E.E.L framework, go to embracinglayers.com, fill out our contact form, and let's set up a free 30-minute consultation to talk about how you can start living your most authentic, organic, healthy, F.E.E.L-fueled life. Thanks again for being with us today. We'll be back to you soon with another episode here on the F.E.E.L Podcast.